Welcome to the Visual Bible Studies channel. This study is just some thoughts about prayer, some basic ideas that sometimes come to mind or just come to my mind, and I have questions to try to answer, and I hope this will answer some of yours. We know that prayer can be long or short. Sometimes we think there's more value in a long prayer, but we see both given in the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah prays a longer prayer in chapter 1, and then we see smaller prayers. We can call them sky telegraphs that go up to God in the time of need. So they're both legitimate, and it depends on your time frame. Also, what is the position of the body as we pray? How should we position ourselves? Is kneeling better? We sometimes hear at the beginning of a prayer that we should close our eyes and bow our heads. Is that the proper position that we should be in? What we find is that closing your eyes can be good to concentrate, but if we're to pray at various times, and perhaps in driving, prayer is an important part. I mean, with the traffic today, I think prayer is essential as we drive. So we shouldn't close our eyes when we drive, because that could be bad. Okay. Linus, the Peanuts resident theologian, had this observation about prayer. He said, "I think I've made a new theological discovery." Lucy responds, "What is it?" And he responds, "If you hold your hands upside down, you get the opposite of what you pray for." I don't think that really works that way. And it's not really the bodily position. So it's not the position of the body that'll make the difference in a good prayer. It's the condition of the heart that will make a good prayer. We find that Jesus didn't bow his head. In fact, we find in John 17:1 that he lifted up his eyes to heaven and began praying his great high priestly prayer. That's something that we don't normally do, but we see Jesus doing it. Paul, in his own prayer life, we find several prayers found in the book of Ephesians, and in this prayer for realization, chapter 3, he says this: "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father." Now, the bowing his knees could be literal or it could be figurative, as a way of demonstrating his submission and his worship before the Father. He goes on and says, "From whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name." In his prayer, he recognizes that the Father is the creator of all, that we all owe our existence to him, and those in heaven and on earth can be and should be understanding the relationship we can have with the Father through his Son, Jesus Christ. And Jesus makes it possible for us to pray before him, giving us not only our introduction to the Father, but access to the Father because of our relationship to Jesus and his work on the cross. How does God answer prayers? We know that there's the yes answer, which we always seek. We'd like to get a yes answer, but not always do we get the answer the way we prayed it. We might have thought of the solution, and we actually have the Lord answering in a yes, but he might do it in a different way than we anticipated, which is okay. I mean, he's sovereign. He should be able to make the adjustments. It's not we who dictate how things should be done. It is God. We have the no answer. We don't care for the no answer that much, but sometimes those become very important answers. And it could be that it's not time for that prayer to be answered, or maybe it's just not his will for us. Therefore, the no is essential. We have to be able to accept that. Sometimes wait is the answer. It is not the time for this to take place, and we need to develop patience and wait to see what God does in and for us through that prayer. Now, We also find there's something else rather interesting, that he can say yes, but sadly, there's a but in it, meaning we won't like the answer. Now, why would that happen? How could that happen? Let me give you an illustration. Back in the book of Numbers, we find that there are times when Israel complained and grumbled and wanted things, so God answered with a yes answer, giving them quails to eat. Yet in an analysis, Psalm 106 gives us this: they quickly forgot his works. They did not wait for his counsel, but craved intensely in the wilderness and tempted God in the desert. So he gave them their request, but sent them a wasting disease. So in their greed and gluttony in getting these quails to eat, God sent a judgment. And so we have to be careful. What is our attitude, and how submissive are we to his will? And how grateful are we for his provision? That becomes important. And we don't want him saying yes to our prayer and then sending some kind of judgment or wasting disease. Numbers 11 continues and says, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very severe plague. We find that it's not a good idea to nag God for something. We can ask, but if we nag, especially if we want something that is selfish, and we keep asking, just like a child in a store nagging his mother for something, that's not a good thing. We need to leave it up to him and have the right attitude by saying, whatever your will is, Lord, I'll accept it. We also find that James gives us this little insight. The effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. What constitutes a righteous man? Well, we in our natural state, as those who are cut off from God because of our sin, cannot call ourselves righteous, for Isaiah talks about how all our righteousness is like filthy rags. It is only in Jesus Christ and trusting in his work on the cross that we find salvation and cleansing, and we are clothed in his righteousness, his perfect righteousness. And in that, I believe that we can consider ourselves righteous before God, not because of ourselves or anything we have done. It's purely the grace of God and his perfect righteousness that makes us able to enter into his throne room with confidence and plead for these prayer requests. We also find that in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 17, it says, Paul says, pray without ceasing. Now, that always puzzled me because I don't have just oodles of time that I can spend just praying throughout the day. I don't live in a monastery. I don't have the ability to just continue praying without any stoppage. But the interesting thing is that this word, as it's used to describe actions in a secular way, describes a hacking cough. That means that as one has a cough, and they cough throughout the day, so it is that we are to pray throughout the day. Not one long, necessarily unending prayer, but throughout the day, we have these times of prayer in between our work, times where we have a little break, we remember God, we pray, we have a quick need, we pray. We're always in a ready attitude of prayer. There's nothing blocking our prayer life, and we're able to, at various times throughout the day, pray. And that would be the fulfillment of the praying without ceasing. So, we do need consistency. Our prayers can go throughout the day at various times and during various needs. So that, I think, are some of my thoughts. I hope that you have gained something. If you like it, you can comment, subscribe, and also please consider sharing.